Good evening. Welcome to Grand Blanc Township Board of Trustees meeting for Tuesday, June 28th. If we could all rise for the pledge, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Roberts would care to call the roll.
I would be happy to call the roll, Mr. Supervisor. Trustee Hugo.
Here.
Trustee Fike.
Yes, here.
Trustee Raritan.
Here.
Trustee White.
Here.
Treasurer Kilmer.
Yep.
Of course, I'm here. Supervisor Bennett.
Yes.
7 members present, a quorum.
Thank you. This time I would ask for a motion to approve the agenda. Motion by Dr. Raritan, supported by Trustee Fike.
Motion by Raritan, supported by Fike. Trustee Raritan.
Yes.
Trustee Hugo.
Yes.
Trustee White.
Yes.
Trustee Fike.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Treasurer Kilmer.
Yes.
Supervisor Bennett.
Yes.
7-0, motion passes.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I would open the floor for public comment. We ask that keep the comments to 3 minutes, and if you would like to provide your name and address for the record, that would be helpful. Yeah, come on up front to the microphone, please. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm first at bat here, so. Good evening, my name is Shane Tiedemann. I live at 9528 Pine Valley Drive in Grand Blanc. I'm here to speak about the Grand Reserve community. Grand Reserve is an active lifestyle community, primarily for people 55 and better. Many of our 730 residents are retired and living on a fixed income. 68% of our residents are above the age of 70. We have invested our life savings in a beautiful community that will keep us active and social as long as possible. I am one of those people. We have 280 acres of land to irrigate, which includes some small parks and other green spaces. Moving some irrigation to well water is one of the few effective ways to reduce expenses while being environmentally responsible. When most of us purchased our homes, we had a water ordinance that was allowed converting to wells for irrigation. The township changed the rules while our community was being built. By the way, we paid for the construction and conditioning of our streets and our street lights. We pay for our own snow removal. It costs the township nothing. Our request is only regarding watering green spaces. We would still pay for the treated city water going into all of our homes. What we want is to be grandfathered into the rules that were in effect when the developer was building our community. Our research has shows only part of our community would be cost effective to use wells for irrigation. We have consulted with specialists in irrigation and a certified civil engineer. Any township revenue decline will be offset by a decline in water purchased. Nobody gets stuck with a bill for water that is not used. This is the way it's supposed to work. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kathy Bogar, and I live at 6385 Prairie Dunes Drive in Grand Blanc, and I'm here to speak also about Grand Reserve. I am just a 2-year resident of this wonderful community that we've become part of. So, what happened? In changing the rules, it was a lot like Ronald Reagan describing the 9 most terrifying words in the English language. I'm from the government, I'm here to help. Well, the township did not help us, it hurt. There was no consideration for grandfathering us in. So much for the environment and cost reductions. Even worse, the builder had plans for 50 more homes to be built. Some of us saw the plans showing home design, streets, and landscaping, but the builder eventually told us that Grand Blanc no longer matched their analytics for development. The negative impact made the burden of taking care of our property and amenities more expensive by having 50 fewer households to share the cost. Before the ordinance was being changed, we had installed a well to do some watering of grass along Baldwin Road. It was successful, but the ordinance change had the effect of stopping any further use of well water for irrigation. Our proposal is to use the water underneath our feet to irrigate green spaces. The township directive is to use water transported many miles from Lake Huron, some elements taken out, fluoride added in, etc. Then it is sent to the Grand Reserve at a premium price. We were told that shutting off water for irrigation is dangerous, even though we do it every year to get ready for winter at the end of every summer. We heard a story about a factory capping off water that caused contamination, although there was no mention that infrastructure around many of our factories was nearly 100 years old. We looked for an example to show if this could be done safely. We were also told that it doesn't matter as much if we shut off the water in colder weather. We looked for an example to show if this could be done safely. We were told that if an exception was made, the township would be inundated with similar requests. We looked for an example to show what would happen. An example was found for each of these concerns, and I believe that's coming up next. Thank you for listening.
Good evening. My name is Deborah Brousseau, and I live at 6402 Prairie Dunes Drive in Grand Blanc at the Grand Reserve community. Here are the facts. There was an exception made that was equivalent to grandfathering in a project. The benefits were described as being better for the environment and less costly. These are essentially the same reasons we expressed. At Bicentennial Park, city water was capped off and a well water was turned on for irrigation, drinking fountains, a splash pad, concessions, everything. There were no reports of contamination. It was successful, and it was done in warm weather, and it was successful. There were no reports of the township being inundated by requests for converting to well water. The fears expressed did not come true. It was successful. This exception was documented in the local weekly newspaper. Yes, a successful exception was made by the township for Bicentennial Park. For Grand Reserve, instead of grandfathering us in, a previous township board agreed with the concept, but was encouraged to consider changing the entire ordinance. This may have been a delaying strategy because it takes so much more time, but the board agreed to pursue this option. Then we were told it could not be on the agenda because of limitations during the COVID crisis. The agenda item was actually delayed for another year. Then we were told of a delay to wait for a commissioned report regarding water and sewer analysis. The commissioned report did not provide major concerns about the Grand Reserve request. So after all these delays, the ordinance was changed in our favor, but the supervisor soon called for a moratorium, creating another delay. And then there was significant persuasion to stop our request with another ordinance change. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else?
Good evening, my name is Al Johnston. I live at 9291 Sand Hill Drive in Grand Blanc Township. I'm the president of the HOA for Grand Reserve. How would you like to invest millions of dollars into a development and have the rules changed in the middle of your project? This is what happened to Grand Reserve when the water ordinance was changed and did not grandfather us into the plan. We believe to change the rules for a company during construction was unfair and a burden to the residents who would live there. We're talking about cost-effectively irrigating 50 to 65% of our property with well water. This would require making things right by grandfathering us into the water ordinance. Our Del Webb community was planned to have many green spaces, including parks. We were told the final 50 homes at Grand Reserve would not be built because Grand Blanc Township no longer matched the analytics for more development. We have very few ways to control costs. Irrigation by wells is one of them. Last year I was here and I told you that there would be more Del Webb communities built in the United States and some in Michigan. They just would not be located in Grand Blanc Township. As an update, we have confirmed that a new Michigan Del Webb will be starting soon. Perhaps it's just a coincidence, but the developer has found a location that will use well water for all irrigation purposes. That suits a Del Webb community perfectly. We have lots of green spaces on purpose. For us, the whole problem during our construction started with, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. The action did not help, it hurt. We've also heard the words, I've been consistent on this issue since it started. But consistency in this context may not be considered a virtue. As a community, we support our government organizations, and our government employees. However, we are totally frustrated when it comes to this one issue. I want to talk for just a moment about persuasion. Sometimes when I stop talking and I sit down, the room sometimes looks like a tag team match, and everyone kind of gets in line and one person says something and then there's persuasion going on. We are aware that that works. One of the most persuasive speakers in my lifetime was Reverend Billy Graham. He spoke to millions of people. He spoke in arenas, he spoke in stadiums, in countries around the world. He persuaded people to have a more spiritual and moral life. He also provided spiritual counsel to all the presidents in his lifetime, Republicans and Democrats. But this story is not about Reverend Billy Graham. It is about persuasion and a reporter. A reporter asked Mrs. Graham about being married to such a persuasive and dominant speaker. Did they ever disagree, and how did they handle that? She replied, of course we disagree. Somebody has to tell him when he's wrong. She went on to say, if they agreed on everything, one of them would be unnecessary. Well, we believe we should have been grandfathered into the ordinance when the rules were changed. We have evidence that our proposal for using well water can be done safely and economically. Citizens who run for office do so to help residents and to make a positive contribution. We ask that you please examine our information. Persuasion should go both ways. When it comes to persuasion, I hope that each of you will feel that you are necessary. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Any more public comment? Going to ask to keep it 3 minutes if you could, please.
I will definitely try. Dave Brown, lives at 9440 St. Andrews Drive in Grand Reserve. You guys have heard enough about our questions why a bunch of 70-year-olds are being singled out for anything under this ordinance. I'm going to leave that one alone. So I just want to address grandfathering in. Grandfathering in is protected. It's also known as non-conforming use. Is protected by statute, is protected by case law in Michigan. And we are already grandfathered in for part of that because we're still watering. So the question is, why what we want isn't being grandfathered in. In 2015, when we put in the multiple wells, we put in the extensive piping, we got permission to do that, you guys gave us permits, you knew that was much more of a deal when that was put in than just running one little section. So you had to know, whoever went out there and inspected it, that we had bigger plans. And under the laws of Michigan, if you're aware of what we're gonna do with that, you really have to grandfather us in. And that's the question I have, is why, if the facts are the facts, why you're fighting us on that? Because you're already grandfathered in a part that's running right now. Because according to your new statute, we would be outlawed from doing that. Correct? So now the question is, why aren't you allowing us to grandfather us in by statute and by common law? And we say, we're not changing anything, we're just going forward with what we had planned from the beginning, and without much modification. All we're doing is utilizing the wells that are already in there with your permission. So my argument is that we should be grandfathered in by statute, by common law, and you should let us go forward. Right?
Thank you. Any other individuals like to speak? Okay, we'll wrap up public comment, bring it back here to the board. I did receive a comment from Mr. Eder. He would like to thank us for a recent situation where the police actually came out to his house and assisted with an elderly family member that had fallen, and helped them to get back on their feet, and really has helped them out. So he wanted to thank us for our police and all that they do. I told him I'd bring that up. With that, we'll move on to our approval of the consent agenda. And just to acknowledge the public comment, we don't have it on our agenda tonight, and we've covered this extensively. Perhaps we'll put together some type of written form of response, but I think there's some misinformation out there as to some of the things that are being portrayed, and maybe we'll try to address some of those again. Anyways, with that, I'll ask for approval of the consent agenda. Ms. Hugo makes the motion, supported by...
Motion by Hugo, supported by Fike.
Yes.
Consent agenda, okay. Agenda, trustee Fike.
Yes.
Okay. Trustee White.
Yes.
Trustee Hugo.
Yes.
Trustee Raritan.
Yes.
Treasurer Kilmer.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Supervisor Bennett.
Yes.
7-0, motion passes.
Thank you. Under old business, we have our strategic plan update. Mr. Remina?
The two items this evening for discussion are an update on the branding for Grand Blanc Township. Executive Coordinator Melissa Roberts is going to deliver that information for you, and then the second item on there will be the Parks and Recreation Facilities, and Parks and Recreation Director Patrick Linehan is here and he'll walk you through that.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm going to make this very brief. We don't have a whole lot of updates. We're almost wrapped up actually with the branding. So the things that you're probably wondering about are, where are our new street signs? I think Joel asks me every meeting. So there's supply chain issues, material issues, and I have been assured that those should be installed sometime in August. So not too much longer. Our sign for our monument sign for the front of our township hall, we are hoping to have by July 12th, which is the first board meeting that we should be having in our new auditorium, newly renovated auditorium. So that should be up as well. So the other items that we have, the main item that's left is the ramp entrance plan, signage over an expressway ramp, and so we've talked about that a little bit. That's more of a 2023 project, and we'll probably address that also when we discuss our strategic plan.
Very good. With regard to, I know it's probably under new business, are you gonna cover when we're doing the tour?
I think Superintendent Lehman is going to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
You've got the dates now, and everybody was prepared. It sounds to me like you do have a date, the 28th.
July 28th is a Thursday, and I'd love to do it at 3 o'clock if we can, from 3 to 6, but if we need to do it from 4 to 7, we can do that as well. 3 to 6 work. We'll do a tour and then we're gonna go over the strategic plan. Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts.
I'm gonna go back down. Maybe.
Maybe something doesn't work.
Technology.
It's coming. There we go.
All right, so I'm gonna go through just a quick update of some of the strategic plan items that we had going on and our ARPA projects. So first of all, some of the update for the strategic plan. The master plan has been submitted and is in review by the DNR. So everything at this point is completely out of our hands and it's in the DNR hands, so that's great. The cell phone tower conversion has been resolved. We don't have to worry about that anymore, which will help us open up funding opportunities through the Department of Natural Resources for land water conservation funds and natural resource trust funds. Currently, we're identifying deficiencies in our facilities. Director Sears and myself have been out to current township properties that we currently own and done some evaluations of those on how in the future we can look at those possibly as recreation spaces. We're in a draft status for the advisory boards and we're currently seeking out funding opportunities for grants. And one that we're working on right now, this just came back today, this is the final draft for the Creasy Bicentennial Park Trail Signage Project. We recently got a grant from the Community Foundation through the Grand Blanc Fund, and this is providing trail signage to both Bicentennial Park and the Perry McGrath Historical Park. So we're going through the process. Any green circle you see on there, there's a number associated with that, and you will see these signs at all those points so people know where they're at within our facilities. Bicentennial Park alone, just in the hiking trails out there, we have close to 3 miles worth of trails. So, you know, this is going to be a great step up for the people that use the facility and people that don't even know that we have this out here. So the barn project, we would like to thank you for putting some ARPA funds towards that. If you look on the left, you can kind of see what it looked like before. No insulation, just pretty much open. We did have a small plywood office right here where you see the paint there, and that's, you know, pretty much where they worked out of. You know, it wasn't great working. Here you can see them building the addition. Here's the addition from the outside. I took this picture on the right this morning. They're moving everything in. They've been working out of a storage container for the past couple months, so they're happily getting everything in there. And here you can see the space. You know, they've got some new cabinets, workbench and that, so they're trying to make the space their own. And here inside the addition, well, first of all, you can see in here we've got everything insulated, the walls, the ceiling, we've improved the lighting, and we do have heat in there for in the wintertime. Here's their office space. Currently we have about 12 employees working out of there, so this gives a great space for them to do all their work in the morning, getting everything going in that. And one of the things they're most excited about is the bathroom right there. So no more porta potties in the wintertime. So you know, the staff is ecstatic about it, and they wanted me to convey my appreciation to you guys for that. So One of the other things that you'll notice in the agenda item, Superintendent Lima and myself met with the county recently, and we talked about some funding opportunities. So we're going to be see some Convention and Visitor Bureau money coming our way. What we're looking at right now is a bleacher accessibility project. We did have bleachers pegged as something that we were replacing, but we think combining the money together would be good, and it'll free up some money for some other things. What we're going to be doing with this, we're going to be replacing the bleachers. We're going to have cement pads down there so they're accessible. We're looking at putting a pathway down to the lower quad that also goes to those. So, trying to build on this for the future. We are one of the premier spots in the area for ball fields and tournaments. I hear it from Miss Hugo as she travels around on a regular basis. So we just want to keep that going so we can continue to see that economic development come into the township. And that's it. Any questions?
Mr. Fike?
What is an accessible bleacher? What is that? How is that different than a regular bleacher?
We're looking at some different elements on it. Handrails, so people that may have limited mobility can, make it up a couple steps. We're also looking at some different options for a wheelchair, whether it be, a cutout or maybe a little bit of a ramp so they can get up there. And then we're gonna have a large enough pad too that, you can wheel down and park in front of the bleachers and that, and actually get down there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I do love those baseball fields.
So how are we doing on tournaments with, I know we have several of them that bring in like, 90 teams?
Yep, so the Fire Sticks tournament is coming up next weekend. And it is a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday tournament. So if you're not interested in softball, I'd stay away. It's gonna be pretty busy, but it's a very cool tournament. What it is it's a college exposure tournament. So the tournament director brings in college scouts from across the state and across the Midwest region. And you do have teams that come in and play from outside Michigan that come in and all over the state. So it's a great tournament. This past weekend and the weekend before, we had the National Softball Association state tournaments at Bicentennial. We keep seeing on a regular basis, even during the week for travel ball or Little League, our fields are consistently booked out.
As well as the hotels in the area.
Yep. I have one more update too. So the other ARPA project, if you remember, was the replacing of the pedestrian bridge in the woods for the trail system. Currently, we had our pre-construction meeting last week, and we're waiting on the culvert. It looks like beginning of August that's going to go in, and it should be a 2 to 3 week project.
Changed up the entrance to Park 2 a little bit.
Yep, the north entrance, we've got a nice garden out there and some fencing, looks great. You'll also notice if you're coming out to the Luau on July 15th, shameless plug, that we've redone the gardens out there. So, we've got some staff that really have that green thumb. So, we're putting that to use to, spice up the areas where we can. Yes, sir.
Have you seen an update or an uptick in the soccer fields being used? Because I know that the field house kind of restricted some of what they were doing for soccer.
So our field rentals for that, AYSO gets 2 fields and DCFC gets 2 fields. So no, but we do partner with Genesee Fieldhouse for the adult leagues in the summertime, and you're right. The field reservations that we've seen last year versus this year for the summertime have cut down. But that's not a bad thing. It gives us some time to get out there to aerate, to reseed, and that, so.
Yes, Ms. Hugo.
I was just wondering how ticket sales have been for the Luau. I've seen it advertised in many places.
Yeah, so we are very comfortable with where the sales are right now. We're probably gonna go through July 1st for ticket sales because we do have to get the orders into the caterers and that. So if anybody's still interested, you have till July 1st. I don't know if I can squeeze anybody in after that, so.
You can sneak it though, right?
I'm just kidding.
We hope to see everybody there. So July
bought my
1st,
tickets.
July 1st will be this Friday, so need to get them before the end of the week.
That's well over 200 tickets at this point.
Yeah, we're, last count, we were about 230. So,
Great. It was a great event last year.
yeah, and, you know, just so everybody remembers, we're gonna go into this a little bit later, but, you know, this is, Parks and Rec's fundraiser for the year, so, you know, a lot of the ticket sales and the donations and the proceeds go to help put on, these type of events and programs for the community.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Lincoln. Okay, under new business, item A, the board will consider a motion to approve the reallocation of $9,629 in unspent CDBG funds to cover shortages in other projects. Is that you, Mr. Lincoln?
You almost got away with
Yes,
that, Patrick, from it.
Mr. Linehan?
Yeah. All right, so just some history on this. The community development block grants come up every 3 years. So 3 years ago, we put the projects forth on what we thought they were going to be, what we thought the costs were going to be, and so far, those aren't holding true. So what we would like to do is use the money that we had for the lighting project, which we actually ended up doing. The Friends Group through the Senior Center, along with a great rebate program that was temporary through Consumers Energy. We got the project done for less than half the original cost for it. We got it done, we got it pushed through, so that leaves these funds available. So for the other projects, we're expecting some overages and that. I actually just got one of the bids back, and it is indeed over. So we would like to use this money for our other community development block grant projects through the Senior Center to allocate that.
Okay. By Trustee Fike, supported by Trustee Hugo.
A motion
Any
by
questions?
Fike,
Yep.
supported by Hugo.
Any
Trustee
questions?
White.
Yes.
Trustee Raritan.
Yes.
Trustee Fike.
Yes.
Trustee Hugo.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Treasurer Kilmer.
Yes.
Supervisor Bennett.
Yes.
7-0, motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Item B, the board will consider resolution 22-11 for the approval of a Michigan Liquor Control Commission special license application for the Luau Fundraiser on July 15th. Mr. Linehan?
All right, so as part of the process, the local board has to give approval for the temporary license for any special event. We've currently, the licenses went before the fire marshal, and he has said yes to it. And Police Chief Wiles has looked it over and signed off on it. So at this point, the only thing left to do is have it come before the board. So we do have a site plan in your packet on how it's going to be laid out. We do have the necessary fencing and crowd controls, along with having people that are tip certified and that. Now it's just up to you.
Okay. Any questions?
I'll
Yes.
make a motion.
Okay, motion by Mr. White,
Support.
support by Dr. Reardon.
Motion by White, supported by Raritan for resolution
Yes.
2211.
Yep, just a moment, clerk.
that?
Yes. Trustee.
What are we voting on?
To allow a liquor license, temporary liquor license for Parks and Rec for the luau that we're having
Okay.
on the later this month.
You'll remember that we had made a similar motion, and it was supported last year for the luau last year, so this is routine as the luau votes, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, okay, Trustee Hugo,
Yes.
Trustee Fike,
Yes.
Trustee Raritan,
Yes.
Trustee White,
Yes.
Treasurer Kilmer,
Yes.
myself, yes, Supervisor Bennett.
Yes,
7-0, motion passes.
thank you. Item C, the board will consider resolution 22-12 12 to amend the 2022 general fund budget in the amount of $856,483. Superintendent Limita?
So from time to time, as we become aware of the fact that we need to make adjustments, either to revenues or expenses in the budget that you have passed, a lot of times we've waited till towards the end of the year and got them all at once. This year we decided to do it midway so that you could see some of the things that needed to be adjusted. Most of them were minor adjustments within the individual cost centers, but the biggest thing was the appropriations because of the increase that we had in the constitutional revenue sharing. That was based upon the increase from the census and our population. And I would just like to caution you that $793,000 that came in as a budget amendment to increase revenue, that is not an annual thing. That did go back into 2021. Normally when we book revenues, we have to book them into the year that they're associated with, but there's a 60-day rule. After 60 days, by the time we got this revenue sharing, it was beyond that. So it is being booked as 2022 revenue. Next year will not be an additional $793,000 more than we normally got. But it is a nice increase, a variation of that. They did go back to October of 2020 to correct from based upon the census, because the census was a little bit late in getting completed because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So what you have before you is the appropriations is the biggest thing, and then you'll notice there were just some, like I said, within the individual cost centers, you'll note that there were just some minor adjustments in several of them.
Yes.
So once again, Dennis, the 793 is from the federal government because our population increased.
The state government.
Oh, from the state government,
Michigan,
all right.
yeah.
Do we get any federal funds for that?
No. This is really our second biggest revenue source beyond property taxes is revenue sharing. And you've got constitutional and statutory revenue sharing. And this adjustment really based upon, it's based on a formula. I'd be happy to send that out to you guys so you have it in front of you, how it comes out through sales tax revenue and some other things, but it is based upon our population. And we went from 37.5 to 39.7 or 39.8, something like that. So pretty considerable increase in our population, and we get to be the recipients of that. So it's a good thing.
Mr. White?
Will we have to do something similar for the ARPA funds by the end of the year?
The ARPA funds book differently, Trustee White, and that is because we will have to do amendments, but it's when they get spent, because we're not booking them in as revenue, they're going into a reserve account and being held, and then because it is that federal grant funds coming in, you actually account for them as you spend them. So as we start to expend these, we'll do the specific ARPA appropriations that you'll see before the end of the year that will show, and there's going to be, primarily it's going into capital accounts, so it'll come out of that capital thing, but you'll see that adjustment, and it will be tied directly to the way we're tracking them, like 2022-1, 2022-2. So yeah, it's a great question. And you will see it, but you won't see, in fact, this week or any day now, we expect to see that second tranche come in of the 1.9 million, and I think there's a little bit of an increase, maybe $7,000, just slightly over $7,000, but it won't be booked as revenue until we spend it sometime by December 31st of 2024.
Then second, are we gonna have to do additional gas for the police and or DPS or other agencies? I see that, with the price of gas and when we did the budget, obviously it's gone up quite a bit. Is there gonna have to be some sort of adjustments there as well?
We made one here for the fire department. The police department, actually, we have a cooperative agreement that we do through the schools. We have less of an impact than what you see at the pump. So at this point within the police budget, we didn't feel, obviously it's a much larger budget. We didn't feel that it was important to make it at this time because, again, we're not seeing as much of an impact because of the purchasing power. But will we end up making one before the end of the year? If gas prices remain at, over $5 or more, I would anticipate that, yes, you'll see one.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we had a motion on that, I believe?
Not yet,
No?
but I'll make it if you wish, Mr. Supervisor.
Supported by Dr. Reardon.
Supported by Raritan, okay. On item 7C, to resolution 2212.
Yes.
Trustee Raritan, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Trustee Hugo?
Yes.
Trustee White?
Yes.
Trustee Fike?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Treasurer Kilmer?
Yes.
Supervisor Bennett?
Yes.
7-0, motion passes.
Okay, new business item D, the board will consider resolution 22-13 to amend the 2022 special revenue fund budget in the amount of $180,362. Mr. Leo?
So as you'll see with this one, again, it's an accounting thing for our special revenue funds. Parks and Recreation is treated like a special revenue fund, or isn't a special revenue fund. You'll see that the minor amendment to them has to do with those projects that we were discussing, and then you're seeing maintenance barn upgrade, pathway bridge repair, those ARPA funds at $180,000 were what the board had approved for those projects. You also see a minor adjustment from the capital projects fund that had to do with a police vehicle that was totaled in an accident. You're seeing the insurance proceeds, and then you're seeing a like expenditure that's going out for purchasing a new vehicle. So these were it's just an accounting purpose. The money came in, we had to account for it in revenue, so that we could account for it in the expenditure column. And then the other thing is under the capital projects has to do with the ARPA funds for the fire station number 2 renovations, as well as the clerk's department high-speed balance scanner that the board approved.
Okay. So moved. Other questions? What is that? Is that you, Edgar? Motion by Reardon,
Motion by Raritan,
supported by Fike.
supported by Fike. On item 7D. Okay, Trustee Fike?
Yes.
Trustee White?
Yes.
Trustee Hugo?
Yes.
Trustee Raritan?
Yes.
Treasurer Kilmer?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Supervisor Bennett?
Yes.
7-0, motion passes.
Thank you. Item E, the board will consider a motion to either approve or deny a Freedom of Information Act appeal request.
Sure. I can start it off, and then Attorney Laddie can provide additional detail. We are the recipients of FOIA requests pretty much on a daily basis, and we comply with those FOIA requests whenever possible. This particular one involved a FOIA request that was asking for the personnel records of a member of our police department. After review, the request was denied based on the FOIA Act, section 15.243, exemptions from disclosure. This exemption specifically cites the personnel records of law enforcement agencies do not have to be disclosed unless there is an overwhelming underlying need to know for the public interest. That has long been our policy that we're not going to release the personnel records of any members of our law enforcement. This didn't cite a specific incident, a date, a question. It's just one officer and a request for his personnel records. So as a matter of course and a matter of policy, we did utilize the exemption allowed for law enforcement personnel records. The requester then sent the appeal. The appeal goes to the head of your body, so it went to Mr. Bennett, and for the board's consideration, and that's kind of where we're at. You guys have the option of denying that appeal or upholding the appeal and having us provide this officer's personnel records. Obviously, we believe that our policy is a good one for preventing our officers from being targets of having their personnel records just given out for anybody, any request. So it's long been our policy, but again, the appeal is here and it's here for your consideration. We also included our FOIA procedures and guidelines for the board's information in the packet, and then the relevant portions of the FOIA Act itself that you can see how the appeal works and the exemption that we utilized in this case. So the question to you is whether or not you want to uphold the denial of those records based on the exemption we use, or if you'd like to reverse that policy and have us
grant the appeal and issue a personal record.
Okay. Mr. Laddie?
No, Dennis has it exactly right. We haven't seen one of these. Actually, I don't even know if we've seen one in the last maybe five or more years. This is a fairly, we receive hundreds, maybe even, if you added up the criminal cases, 1,000 FOIA requests over the course of a year. This is extremely rare. The exemptions, as you can see in the materials, are very limited. The exemption of Ms. Potter, who's very well versed in the Freedom of Information Act, she cites very specific protection for personnel records from law enforcement personnel. And one thing that Dennis pointed out I think is important is the requester didn't list any, didn't give us any examples or any specifics regarding any overwhelming public interest. And I think that's telling as far as their request is concerned, and also telling that it probably isn't much of an overriding public concern if they're not citing a specific incident, a specific date, or a specific issue. And so I would urge you to uphold our long-standing policy of not exposing police personnel records without substantial evidence of an overwhelming public concern.
Okay. Somebody care to make a motion or any questions?
I have a
Yes.
question.
Okay.
So,
Mr. White?
can you explain, and this one is a yes vote to approve your request?
No, well, I think let's.
I'm a little confused.
Yeah, if you're gonna have a motion, I think the motion would be a motion to uphold the decision of FOIA coordinator to deny the applicant's request.
That's a yes vote.
That would be that would be a good motion, and the yes vote would uphold the deny.
To approve, to uphold
Well,
decision.
Ms. Hugo had her hand up. I'm not sure. Were you making a motion, Ms. Hugo? Or did you have a
I
question? Okay. To uphold the denial of the appeal. So Ms. Hugo has made the motion to uphold the appeal. Yes, the denial. Mr. Flake?
I'm seconding.
Okay. Any discussion?
Okay, motion by Hugo,
Any questions?
seconded
I just have
by,
a-
Yes.
They reserve the right to file in circuit court to challenge this, correct?
You're exactly right. If they want to go to a further step, they're entitled to go to circuit court and make that argument.
Because I guess and maybe there was an email that our, Joel's and my email have had issues. This wasn't just some Joe Schmo off the street doing this. That makes me a little leery. I mean, an Associated Press is not just some group that's, I think, needlessly looking for this. So I'm a little uncomfortable, but at the same time, I wish they were a little more specific. And if they're asking for between X date and X date, then it might be a different case than just anytime, anywhere, all of it. So.
And they're not providing any rationale, correct?
Correct.
Right.
And this is the same policy we'd use for any employee, public employee, right?
Correct, and it's interesting, in the statute, it specifically talks about law enforcement officers, so there is a higher degree of protection for law enforcement officers.
Okay, any other questions or concerns? Clerk Roberts.
okay, I'll call the roll, Mr. Supervisor?
Yes.
Trustee White,
You're gonna have to tell me again which way to do
this is the motion to uphold the decision of the FOIA coordinator denying a Freedom of Information Act request.
Yes.
Yes.
Trustee Raritan,
Yes.
Trustee Fike,
Yes.
Trustee Hugo,
Yes.
Myself, yes. Treasurer Kilmer,
Yes.
Supervisor Bennett,
Yes.
7-0, motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Future agenda items. One of the things that I would like to see if we couldn't do, Mr. Luna, is to, I know we have the master plan for the Parks and Rec. Within that is our pathway plan. I would like to explore that further in more detail in an upcoming meeting where we actually look at the pathway plan and also discuss the prioritization of each of those segments of the plan and what our plans are for each of those segments, as far as timeline and in what order we're going to do them. I know that we've gotten quite a bit of interest in doing lots of odds and ends that maybe aren't part of that plan, but the only way we're going to complete that plan is sticking to the plan instead of, I know it'd be great, you know, if we could find $500,000 to pave shoulders, but you know, unfortunately, we don't have that kind of money just laying around for that. If we did, we'd do some more pathways. We do have one plan for going down Baldwin, a pathway separate from the road. It'd be much safer than riding on the shoulder with 60-mile-an-hour traffic. But I'd like to see if we couldn't discuss in public, you know, the prioritization of each of those segments. I know that internally our staff knows what those are, but I'd like to see, make sure the board's aware of what that priority is and the public. I'd also like to see if we couldn't publish that pathway plan for the public so they see that there is within the master plan for Parks and Rec, that something that widely is known, you know, or make it widely known what that plan is and what the priorities are, so those that would like to contribute maybe financially towards that pathway have a clear idea of what we're doing and what we're intending to do over the next, you know, 5 to 10 years with that plan. So, what do you have for a future agenda? Anything that?
So I'll be in a meeting tomorrow morning with the Plant Moran Cressa folks. These are the project managers that the board authorized for the campus project for the DPS and Fire Station #1 build-outs. We think we're finally at an area, in an area that it would be appropriate for them to come and address the board and provide an update on where they are and allow you to meet with the project managers, the project management team for this, and kind of give you the timeline of what we're looking at. We've gotten some information, we've scaled it back. Primarily to date, it's been looking over the space needs assessment that we had done previously, and making some adjustments there. They kind of put block diagrams together and scaled those buildings and put a preliminary price tag on it without a lot of detail. We went back in and cut about $1.1 million out of there, just to try to make it more manageable. Clearly the costs are way up in 2022 versus where they were 3 years ago. That's unfortunate, but we still have to make sure that we can afford to move this project forward. And so we're still working through those details, but I believe at your next meeting on July 12th, it would be, if they're ready to go, and I'll figure that out tomorrow during our meeting in the morning, we'll have them on your agenda to come in and kind of do their introduction and then show you the timeline. And it's about 33 months, I think, right now, about how we would move forward if everything comes together.
Okay. Very good. Anything else that anybody would like to see us cover for future agenda items? Okay, on to board reports. Ms. Hugo, anything? Mr. White, anything with ZBA?
No.
Okay, Mr. Fike?
No update, but I did want to make an announcement. The man that founded the Disability Network, Mike Zelli, has died. And he was a big leader in the disability community, and he will be missed.
That is a loss.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Meriden? Okay. Mr. Kilmer? Treasurer Clerk Robertson?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor, I have 2 items. One, and both of them are kudos to my deputy clerk. Lynn and I attended the Michigan Association of Municipal Clerks conference last week. That's the annual conference that takes place every year. And during that conference, Lynn was elected to the board of directors of the Michigan Association of Municipal Clerks. And it was by acclamation. All in favor say aye. It's a testament to the high regard with which she is held by her fellow clerks throughout the state of Michigan. And I think that, as I understand how these things are done within the association, it may, in the not too distant future, put her in a position to actually lead the organization a few years down the road, because there are a series of chairs and you basically move up through the ranks once you are on the board. So that is a testament to her, and it is another statement of the fact that we, the people of Grand Blanc Township, are very, very well served to have her as our deputy clerk. Let me also point out the fact that over the last several weeks, because of some unique circumstances in the county clerk's office, Lynn has been on her own time providing training sessions for election inspectors, not just for our people here, of course, which is required by law. Every 2 years they have to get recertified, but is doing these sessions also for election inspectors all over Genesee County. She did one just yesterday evening in Forest Township, and 50 people attended. So, like I say, there's some circumstances that are unique at the county clerk's office right now, and she stepped up to in a leadership role in providing that training for those folks. And so I think that the people of Genesee County as a whole are being well served by her devotion to her profession. And so I wanted that stated for the record, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. That is quite a accomplishment. So.
Oh, one other thing, I missed the preparations for the August 2nd election are taking place in earnest. We had an elections commission meeting just before this meeting to approve the list of electors, the inspectors, if you will, for each of the precincts and the AV counter boards. And we of course sent out absentee ballot applications township-wide last week, and those are starting to come in, and they're being processed. So we are going to be a beehive of activity for sure in the weeks ahead, and basically we're going to be at this through August and then all the way through to November. So crunch time has happened.
Well, seeing your office, it looks already it is a beehive with
Yes.
activity with even this early on.
Yes.
What's the name of the organization that Ms. Henry was elected to?
The Michigan Association of Municipal Clerks.
Okay, very good. Well, passing the board's congratulations to you.
I certainly will.
Okay, myself, just a couple of things I want to touch on. One is our code enforcement. While they work for Mr. Lemet, I just want to say my own perspective is that from the phone calls I'm receiving, they are over the right places because our phone is ringing from people and they are out there. I was speaking to one of our code enforcement people today, and I'm not sure if the board can see this list, but this is one particular residence, a home that here in the north part of the township that starting from 2007 probably has at least 4, maybe 4 notifications each summer for the last since 2007 for grass mowing that we end up going out and either citing them or cutting the grass. We finally are getting compliance from them after all these years where they've actually brought in a huge dumpster and cleaned up their yard and trimmed everything around the house, and looks fabulous. But our code enforcement, I think, from what I'm seeing, they are doing a great job and really taking care of some issues now that we have the staff. And I think while not everybody was pleased with the change in the ordinance on the RVs and what have you, recreational vehicles, I am thinking from the sound of it and the looks of it, they are able to spend their time on more productive items like grass mowing and blight and what have you. So they're getting to those issues every day. And I can just say I know that Mr. Lehman is working hard on development along with planning and zoning, building department. There's lots of interest. I know everybody wonders, hey, what's coming to Grand Blanc Township, but I can just say that there's lots of folks that are coming to us, even during these times of expensive building costs. They're coming to us wanting to develop, and it seems like it's picking up steam. It doesn't seem like it's slowing down at all. So that's encouraging for both our tax base and just growing the township. With that, Mr. Laddie?
Just real quick, along the lines of what Clerk Robertson was talking about, I represent a community that needed some help, and Ms. Henry and Clerk Robertson are very accommodating and helpful and very community-minded, and I know that they appreciate that, so thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ladd. I should have mentioned as well, but thank you very much for mentioning it.
Superintendent Lee?
Unfortunately, the folks from Grand Reserve left, but because you are a relatively new board and you may not be aware of how much time that has been spent on this issue, I'll provide a background and get it out to you guys sometime in the next couple of days, just so that you have the facts behind it. But it's not like it wasn't looked at, or that it was not paid close enough attention, or we just did it out of spite, or this issue came up a long time ago when they came in, and just in a nutshell, initially when the developer came in, he asked for a huge investment on the township's part to get that infrastructure brought out to that area, with the idea that he was going to build this incredibly beautiful development, and he did. The development is fantastic. But part of that ask was, how do we size it for to bring that infrastructure out to you? What does that look like? And his answer was, we're going to have all these, all this thing's going to be on irrigation. We're going to be irrigating. It's going to have all this green space. So we're going to have all these homes cooked in municipal water. So the township agreed, and they sized that infrastructure and brought it out to this development to encourage that growth. When they asked about, grandfather, because there's some wells out there who also supply irrigation, that's true, because before we could finish our infrastructure project to get them water out there, they said, can we run some irrigation off of the ponds that are out here so that we can green up this area, make it look good, so they could market the development before we could get the infrastructure there. And the township approved that and sized it to meet the demand. So we did everything that the developer asked. It's only after the developer pulled out 2 years ago and stopped subsidizing the cost of that irrigation that then Grand Reserve came to us. We changed this ordinance in the beginning of 2016 after reviewing it in 2015, the fall of 2015. They did not come to us with any questions about this until 2019. And then looked at a petition and said, we don't want to unhook everything, we just want to unhook some meter pits. That brings up some other issues, like a cross-connection program, because we have to make sure there's no cross-contamination. There's a lot of things that go into this. And the board reviewed and made that ordinance change, like I said, in 2016, and adopted that ordinance change, because if you've already spent the money to develop the infrastructure, to bring it to an area, and then you allow people that once they're connected to disconnect, then you've got to create cross-contamination inspections to make sure that none of that is getting hooked back up, or well water is being connected to a municipal water system. So there's a lot more than meets the eye behind what was presented this evening. Said, I'll put together a primer of a couple pages and a timeline, and again, we'll show you. I've got a folder that's probably 8 inches thick about this thing. It's been considered by, if you guys consider it, you will be the 3rd board who has considered this, again, about whether this makes sense for the township. It's been denied or been recommended that you don't do this by the people who, Raf Callis, who did our rate study, Dan Potter, who was your consultant, your DPW director, Jeff Sears, as well as myself. So there's a lot of information that goes into this, and your township engineer, road engineering, but I will provide all that information. It's got to be all.
Yes.
Didn't we vote on this 18 months ago?
Yep.
Right at the beginning of our
That's what
term.
I thought. I was very.
Yeah.
In May of 2021, you adopted the second reading of the water ordinance. You voted on it.
So 3 boards have already considered this subject, and each time found that it was detrimental to the township.
I think, the other thing, if you could address, Mr. Lemita, in that document, the misconception on the parks, and that we do allow people to irrigate with well water, but not to disconnect from municipal water.
Correct. The ordinance distinctly talks about disconnection of, once you're hooked up to municipal water, is then disconnecting that connection to run irrigation systems. There's a house that was built just recently across from my house, just down the road from me on McCandlish, that did that. He came in and he came in with his house plans and said, this is my irrigation system, this is how it's not gonna be impacted, but I want my house connected to the municipal water system. That was approved. You know, it's about the disconnection. They wanna take out certain meter pits, and that's the problem that we run into. We paid to put the infrastructure in. Had we known that they only wanted to do this for a little bit of time, and then they were gonna try to disconnect it and hook more to well water, we probably would have struck a different bargain with the developer in the beginning and had them pay for running the infrastructure to their development.
This might be a speculative question, maybe it can't be answered, but I'll just pose a question rhetorically. Is this an issue where they might have a cause of action against the developer?
Oh, against the developer? It's possible, but not likely. And as far as their arguments regarding non-conforming uses, they don't have a solid legal argument as far as we're concerned. But I don't know if they can make the argument that they were somehow misled or the developer misrepresented the actual cost of the association fees.
I was thinking in terms of the withdrawal without the completion of the 50 houses as was envisioned at the outset.
I think that would be a very unlikely cause of action.
That's why I'm not a lawyer, I just thought I'd ask the question.
Could we send, I mean, I don't know. When you get your document together, maybe we could share it with these folks?
They've seen it.
Okay.
They just disagree.
Oh, okay.
There's some new folks though that just moved here, but somehow.
We'll be happy to share it with them, and like, here's the primer on it, here's where we're at, here's why our recommendation remains unchanged, that we don't encourage you to allow disconnections from the municipal system once they're connected. One other item, you guys saw the email, we didn't have Chief Wiles was not going to be available here for this meeting. He is attending a week-long conference over with the Michigan Association of Chiefs of Police. He did submit his intention to retire on August 28th of this year. Not unexpected. Really, he could have gone anytime last year. He agreed to this to move us forward. His 26 years of exemplary service to the folks in Grand Blanc Township is well, it's detrimental. It's a blow to us to see him go, but it's a well-deserved retirement. I think he's got a great future ahead of him. We've had a succession plan in place for every single position in Grand Blanc Township. It's not any different for the chief. Those wheels are already in motion. We will start a recruitment process. I'm already reaching out and starting to put the information together. We're going to ask recruiting firms. We'll send them RFQs to give us a proposal on starting a nationwide recruitment for our next police chief. We should have that information back so that to the board, an update for your July 12th meeting, and we'll start that process. We'll probably have some questions. The police committee will come together as we start to think about what kind of police chief do you guys want to see in Grand Blanc Township. We've had a long-standing tradition, especially under Chief Wiles, of community policing, and it focuses not so much on law and order versus community policing. And I, for one, would hope that we would continue that focus on community policing, making sure our officers are involved out in the community. But we'll have time to get that kind of questionnaire out to you guys of what we're looking for. We can include that in the prospectus that we're going to put together for the recruiter. And then said, we'll just know that this is probably a 6 to 9 month time frame to have somebody in. We've got Ron until August 28th. But we do have a succession plan in motion. We're already working through that. I've already spoken with Captain Bowserman about consideration of potentially being the interim police chief, which is exactly what we did when Chief Stam left and Chief Wiles stepped up and it was the interim chief. So we already have a letter of agreement that we did last time with the command unit. So I just want to give you guys to kind of think about that. We'll have some more information coming out in 2 weeks. But Ron will be here, and then it will be a formal motion of the board to consider accepting, regretfully, Ron's desire to retire from us after 26 years on August 28th.
Okay. Yes, it was a loss for our township, but it is well deserved. So.
Is a motion to adjourn in order, Mr. Supervisor?
Support. Unless, is there anything further? Mr. Laddie, Mr. Lena?
No, sir.
Go ahead.
Motion to adjourn?
Adjourn at
All those in favor say aye.
Aye, 8:10 PM.
Thank you.